Welcome back, virtual circuit riders. This session we will look at the Methodist experience with the African American people in America. Keep in mind, way back at the beginning, we remember that in the general rules that Wesley created for his British societies and small classes, the general rules labeled the buying or selling the bodies and souls of men, women, and children with the intention to enslave them as one of the evils, one of the most clear evils that Wesley thought. In 1774, he published a tract, Thoughts Upon Slavery, where he wrote, "Give liberty to whom liberty is due, that is, to every child of man, to every partaker of human nature. Let none serve you but by his own act and deed, by his own voluntary choice." His Thoughts on Slavery was published widely in America, and it was a 1774 tract that affirmed Wesley's anything but mild views against slavery. Quote, "I absolutely deny all slaveholding to be consistent with any degree of natural justice, mercy, and truth. Liberty is the right of every human creature." His Thoughts on Slavery was published in America, and over time, Francis Asbury and Thomas Coke both were resisted in their preaching against slavery. But early on in American Methodism, African Americans were attracted to the egalitarian message. Christ died for not the elect, which might be interpreted as the wealthy, but Wesleyan Arminian theology argued Christ died for the whole world, that his death on the cross was efficacious for all humanity. And so this attracted African Americans, both freed and slave. John Street Church in New York City, even in 1768, Thomas Taylor, the lay leader, wrote, "Within 6 months, half of our congregation were white and half Negro." So, Harry Hosier, this man here that you see, was one of the great early leaders. He was present at the Christmas conference. He was Francis Asbury's traveling partner. Probably part servant, but free, because Asbury could not countenance slavery. And so when they went into new towns, they would publish that Francis Asbury would preach, but then Harry Hosier would carry the day and preach with such power that he was accorded, according to John Adams, the early American president and politician, Harry Hosier was the most powerful preacher in America. So Harry Hosier accompanied Francis Asbury throughout his life up until 1805. He was a originally uneducated man, and Asbury began to educate him, and Harry began to lose his power in preaching, according to Harry. And so Harry gave up learning to read for the sake that he could continue to preach. Harry Hosier is, along with our next person, Richard Allen, they were both present at the Christmas conference of the MEC in America at 1784, and they both, in differing ways, created streams of African American Methodism that continue today. Harry Hosier had created the Zoar Church, which, if we look at Philadelphia here, St. George's is here, and Harry Hosier, who was a important traveling companion with Francis Asbury, created Zoar United Methodist, which you can see here today in the urban area of Philadelphia. You can go on the General Commission of Archives and History, and they will give you a history of Zoar United Methodist Church. Zoar never left the Methodist Episcopal Church, and so it's an African American congregation with a unique history in that it did not leave and did not create an independent congregation. So Zoar always remained within the Methodist Episcopal Church, and today is a historic church for United Methodists, and particularly African American. Now, Dream, which comes out of Philadelphia, is Richard Allen and the AME, the African Methodist Episcopal Church. And you can see from here that Richard Allen became a preacher, again, under Francis Asbury's unusually progressive ministry to African Americans, with Harry Hosier and Richard Allen, who was also at the Christmas conference. And he purchased his own freedom while preaching and leading African American class meetings at the St. George's congregation in Philadelphia in 1787. He led an important early walkout, sort of an early bus protest or cafe protest. Just remember, St. Philadelphia, not too far from Episcopalian ordained minister, lead a walkout from St. George's in 1787. As was common at the time, 1787, in Methodism, it was customary and racial prejudiced to allow the blacks to come to communion table and to baptism, to the sacraments, after the whites. And so at this point, Richard Allen began with Absalom Jones to protest this, and in 1787 he orchestrated a walkout in protest of this racial practice. He recorded in his book, which was his own writings, Sunday, November 1787, "We were not long upon our knees before I had considerable scuffling and low talking. I raised my head and saw the trustees, who laid hold of Reverend Absalom Jones, pulling him off his knees, saying, 'You must get up. You must not kneel here until the whites. Wait until prayer is over. You must get up now, or we'll call for aid and force you away.'" Well, in the end, Richard Allen and Absalom Jones led a walkout, which over time led to separate meeting facilities, in which he purchased a blacksmith shop and hauled it to his own property, which he bought as a free man, and ultimately in 1816 forming Bethel AME on that site, and the formation of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. By being forced to stay in the balconies until the whites had communion or baptism, Richard Allen, seen here, purchased his own property, and it was originally a blacksmith shop that he hauled with his own horse and carriage to form Mother Bethel AME in Philadelphia. And you can see here on the map, here is St. George's, and he hauled this blacksmith shop with his team of horses to here at 419 6 in Lombard Street, and that's where we see it today. There's St. George's and Zor, which comes out of a walkout from St. George's, but the real walkout that had lasting effect is here, Mother Bethel AME, which is the mother church of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, and you can see it right there. After the walkout that created Mother Bethel, with Francis Asbury supporting the independent movement, Richard Allen works with other African American congregations that move out of Methodist Episcopal churches, some in New York City, some in Baltimore, which we'll see in a minute, and Richard Allen knits together a network of Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Wilmington, Delaware churches, and also in Attleboro, Pennsylvania, as well as Salem, New Jersey. They meet together and convene in 1816 the AME. It's a very fascinating story. They consecrate Allen as their bishop, and then these two men, Morris Brown later on becomes the missionary to the West and the South, and Bishop Daniel Payne, who is elected, becomes the writer, historian, and the first African American college president of Wilberforce University. You can see that the AME is worldwide, roughly 2.5 and growing million members today. And you can see that the mission of the AME, which originally started as a small network of churches in the Northeast, particularly the mid-Atlantic states, after the Civil War was able to come southward in mission and attract newly freed slaves who had been catechized and brought into the Methodist Episcopal Church South, which we will look at. And you can see here that the movement spread west after the Civil War ever further to the middle of the 19th century. The AME has continued to spread and grow and is a major member of the worldwide Methodist family. As a racist response, as a response to racism, as it were, the AME has grown into a worldwide movement, and Richard Allen is considered one of the great early African American leaders. He sued the state of Pennsylvania for the right to own his property here at Mother Bethel and won. He's the first African American to win a state Supreme Court case, and is the first African American bishop in American history. Bishop Richard Allen is a national figure because he was able to create the Freedmen's Aid Society in 1787. He was the first African American ordained clergy after Absalom Jones in the Episcopal Church, and he was the first consecrated bishop in America. His Freedmen's Aid Society becomes the forerunner of the National Association of the NAACP, and he is a towering figure, obviously in the AME, but also in American history, and is a patron saint of the AME.